Hey everyone, welcome to Isaac Talks. Today I wanted to talk about how I've taken the first steps in changing my financial life, walk through how I'm doing it, and maybe give you some ideas on how you can do it yourself. This will be the first in a series of videos where I just talk about my own financial situation and the steps I'm taking to improve it. And these steps are not fancy, they're not sophisticated. These are entry level, easy to set up, and easy to get started with. And I'm starting with these efforts from scratch. No cash infusion, no trust fund, no nest egg savings from living with my parents for half of my 20s. Just me, the income from my 9 to 5, and how I use my monthly savings. Now, before we get into it, obvious disclaimer. This is not financial advice. This is just what makes sense to me and how I'm getting started developing my own personal finances. This might not be the best approach to use, but this is where I'm starting off. All right, with that said, let's dive in. The first two steps I followed in this process. 1, establish an emergency fund, and 2, start paying off debt. If you've ever seen Dave Ramsey's content online, these are 2 parts of his baby steps process. It is a-okay to use the ideas of someone as successful as he is, because he wouldn't be so successful if he didn't know what he was talking about. Building that emergency fund of just $1,000 is the key. That is your absolute dire emergency money to keep your life moving. That is, I have a nail in my tire money, or I need another dose of life-saving medicine money. It is there to cover those expenses that, if left unchecked, will throw your life off the rails very quickly. A nail in your tire means you can't drive, which then threatens your job, and then your housing, and so on. This gives you a foundation to stand on for the moment. It isn't meant to stay at $1,000 forever, just long enough to get through step 2, which is paying off debt. Once I had my financial footing, I tackled my debt with everything I had. I lived frugally and continue to live frugally now, which allowed me to put around 40 to 45% of my monthly take-home pay into dealing with debt. I bring home around $5,200 per month net after tax, which is well above my living expenses. So I use that excess to get my credit card completely paid off. Seriously guys, credit card interest hurts, especially when it hits every single month. I went through a stint of unemployment last year, which meant I had to live on my credit card for a while. Ordinarily, that is the last thing you would ever want to do, but without a job, I didn't have a choice. So I did what I had to do, knowing good and well that I would face those consequences later. My car loan was the next thing on the payoff docket. I got my car several years ago and only just this past month finished paying for it, which unfortunately means I paid the full interest on the loan. But in that time, I've changed jobs 3 times, bought a home, and had the unemployment stretch last year, so in the grand scheme of things, it isn't the worst thing to have happened. I wound up buying a Camry, which is a very consumer-friendly vehicle and easy to repair if something breaks. Which, side note on the repairs, if you're considering buying a car, please think about the maintenance on that vehicle as well. I had a Volkswagen before my Camry, and the issue with German engineering is there are very few American auto repairmen that can fix a part when it breaks. And now I'm very happy to say that I've done both of these things, and it is a gigantic weight off of my shoulders, and it's really gratifying too. Having accomplished something that I thought just a year ago was so far away really put a strong swing in my step, and it still helps to motivate me, get me out of bed, and to keep pressing on every day. All right, the next 2 steps in my journey. Build a proper savings nest egg and start investing monthly. I've got my emergency fund and my debt is paid, aside from my mortgage, but if there's any kind of debt to keep, that one's okay. So now I have some wiggle room to start bringing other tools to bear into my own life. As I went through and I audited my accounts recently and really just reminded myself of what I already knew deep down, is that my bank savings account interest was non-existent. And during my job hopping and unemployment days, I had to liquidate all of my IRA and 401k balances. And yes, that means I ate the penalties for every one of those early withdrawals, which absolutely sucked. But I was strapped for cash at the time and I needed those balances liquid, so once again, I didn't have a choice. So I did a little research for the alternatives to savings accounts at the banks that would actually be worth something, and I came across one called Marcus. This is the high-yield savings account from Goldman Sachs, and after researching it, I was comfortable with integrating that into my own personal finances. Again, not financial advice. Do your own research before you make any moves for yourself. This works for me by serving as a savings account that will actually generate some interest. Now granted, I'm still at a negative real rate of return, sure, but the point of the account isn't to beat the market or inflation. The point is to be my 6 to 8 month nest egg, which for me is around $18,000. And I sat down and mapped out how long that would take for me to build, which for me, it would take about 11 months to fully fund with my current allocation of what dollars I'm putting in savings and what dollars I'm directing towards any investments that I've got going. Now that can feel like a long time, but in the grand scheme of life, it really isn't that long. As long as I stick with it and I don't quit, I'll be there in no time. And speaking of not quitting, that brings up investments. This one for me is not my first priority off of the cuff, which might sound odd, but let me explain my reasoning. I've been through a few stretches of financial stress where I wondered where the money for bills was going to come from and even scraped the bottom of the barrel once, and I nearly did it again earlier this year. So financial stability and security are emotionally more important to me right now. There are plenty of very smart people that might disagree with that, and hey, that is 100% okay. I'm just trying to share what I'm doing and how I'm thinking about things that drives the why I'm doing it. That said though, my goal is to be a boring investor. S&P 500, dividend income, and other investments that I can put almost on a fire and forget approach. I won't actually forget about them, but I don't want investments that would require me to actively manage anything and instead have holdings that work for me even while I sleep. My goal is to eventually have a portfolio that generates dividend income to supplement my primary income, which maybe doesn't happen for 40 years, and I'm okay with that. Compounding value is the name of the game here, and I'm man enough to admit I am not smart enough to fight with institutional traders who have real-time data at their fingertips. Long-term, absolutely no diamond hands stock buying, and just being disciplined about it. I think that will do much better for me than trying to get creative with some exotic strategy or another. Now, speaking of strategy, now we're on step 5, or my step 5, side income. This is going to take a lot of time to build, or I think. It could take a little time, maybe it will take a long time, but either way, time is the necessity, which is why I have started this YouTube channel, and why I started it now. I want to create content and document how this is all working for me, along with any other video ideas that I might be floating around, plus anything else that might come up over time. All to build this channel into a source of side income and maybe eventually replace my primary income with YouTube related revenue. The thing about YouTube though, is like Twitch or any other content creation, it is a grind early on. Building that initial audience is like being in the trenches. But there's something about it that makes me want to keep trying and keep putting new videos out there, knowing good and well I'm going to have some smelly hot takes early on. I've even thought about starting some kind of service business that provides AI services to other small businesses. It's a huge, untapped market with plenty of interest, but nowhere near enough manpower to properly utilize it, which is exactly where I could fill the niche. Of course, I want to provide quality services to any client, so I'm working to ensure that I understand what I would actually offer as a portfolio and then building my own proficiencies in those offerings so that the value proposition becomes that much more worth it to the client. And I'm doing all this while I have a 9-to-5. That might be difficult in the future, but hopefully at that point I'll have enough side income that I could just adjust to a contractor role or even step away from that 9-to-5 entirely to focus on my other revenue streams. And now this is well far into the future, but these are just some of the things I think about. As I mentioned as an aside or in an earlier video, I wanted to hit Coastfire and I still do. And this is basically my first draft strategic plan of how do I get there. And this is again all very long-term prospects right now, but I have no idea where I might be a year from now. But if there is anything that I do know, is I'll be glad I started when I did. Now coming to the end, let's recap. Starting your personal finance journey is doable. Maybe even more than you think. Not everybody starts at the same starting line, but you can get there just like I did. No inheritance, no nest egg, no laughably low expenses for half of my 20s, no trust fund, nothing. I sat down, took a hard look at my own finances and asked myself, how can I make this better with the tools that I have? And so I started with that emergency fund and paying off my debt. Now I'm reestablishing my savings. I'm starting to invest again. I've started this channel. And now I'm thinking about other high potential ROI businesses that I could start while keeping my overhead as low as possible for as long as possible. This is how I'm thinking about building my personal finances and improving my life in the coming years. Now I'm sure that plan will adapt over time, which is also okay. You don't need to create some master plan for your life now. You just need enough of a plan to start making progress. It is going to feel slow at first. Just like starting this channel, it's going to feel like you are in the trenches with a shovel that is halfway past its expiration date. But every small step is one more detail that compounds towards the tipping point of financial security or success or whatever goal you're after. And on that note, that's all for this video. If you enjoyed, I'd really appreciate it if you drop a like and a sub. When I said building this channel was like being in the trenches, I really was not joking. Starting small is a challenge, but you know what? I know what I've signed up for. I'm going to power through it. I'm going to keep going. And I would love it if you'd stick around and come and see where this journey goes with me. Comment your thoughts down below and let me know if this inspired you to start this process for yourself, or maybe if you're already 2 steps or 3 steps ahead of me and you've got a couple of pointers you can share too. Because at the end of the day, we're all people. We all have our own goals. We all have our own desires. We all have our own things that we want to do. And I want you to win too. Because you know what? Life isn't a zero-sum game, and we can all win this game together. Thank you all again for watching. It really does mean the world to me. Y'all take care, and I'll see you in the next one.